shop I hang out in at home, where I work on everything that I would work on, kind of like what is in the shop at school, except for it's just a lot smaller because it's only me. 3 motorcycles in various states of repair. They're not in the best condition currently, but the outside, the furthest one away is mine, the closest one away is mine. This one you guys put together at school. They're the identical bike, just this is with all the spare parts I have. And then the bike that I raced last year is the one with the cooking sheet tray tool holder above it. I'll kind of walk through and look at all of them. Tire pile, that's my expired, used, no longer needed race tire pile from the last summer. They have to be recycled at some point. I just haven't got around to doing it. Usually where I store the stuff that's going to the racetrack, spare rims, air container, gloves, ratchet straps to hold everything down. Odd spot to have at the front of the shop with all my welding rod wire for whenever I need to fix an imminent crash damage. Whole bunch of this rack. I usually just store parts off of my motorcycle whenever things are all ripped apart. Generator, which needs to be fixed and we just haven't gotten to it. And then second floor above. Let's see if I can name this so that you guys can see. It's just a whole bunch of storage, nuts and bolts. Just random fasteners that get used for either building, fixing, making, whatever the case is. Batteries. Too many toys, too many engines. Ends up being a lot of batteries. 1.6 pounds, tiny, weighs nothing. That's what goes in my race bike. Almost the same size, but substantially heavier. This one goes in my dirt bike. This one is for my second race bike. Sawmill, which is outside, and the tractor that I used to own and managed to seize and wreck. That battery was a lot of money. I should just get rid of it, but it still works. And then lawn tractor battery and a charger, and I just rotate through, charging them all periodically as needed so that they make it through the winter without falling apart. Probably the worst for your health, but this stuff works amazing. Braking parts cleaner. I try not to use it too much, but I do keep it around just for whenever something's being a bit stubborn. And then the shelf up above is just motorcycle parts from my motorcycle that's all taken apart, and then some specialty tools. That's a machine for refilling and servicing shock absorbers, and I just leave it up on the shelf so that I have it when I need it. Below is embarrassing. It's just Rubbermaid bins, parts and parts and parts and parts the whole way along. So that wall from let me see if I can pan this in. This is a 30-foot long garage, so from the door stored all the way down and around, and then under this whole back half section of the benches is all spare parts to put the two motorcycles back together, or if I crash or wreck stuff, I just have it all in bins and separated. Gas cylinder, that's nitrogen. I use that for refilling shock absorbers when I take stuff apart, service it, clean it. Huge jug of oil for all of my motorcycles and everything that ends up getting serviced over the year. It's a 19-liter pail. It's just suspension fluid I use just to keep things consistent. I use the same stuff for everything. This motor is a project on hold. It's actually a former teacher from St. FX, Mr. Chassons. So this has all been completely taken apart, gone over, cleaned, organized, rebuilt, a whole bunch of new parts. Of course, as soon as I'm talking, the furnace kicks on, but so be it. Can't do much about it. Whole bunch of junk in the back corner, stuff I don't use that often. Axle stands, oil container. This is probably my nicer of the workbenches. Stainless steel top. I had this bent at Lucon Metal maybe like 15 years ago, so that's 16 feet of workbench, two 8-foot sheets, bent twice, and then I just built a wood frame to hold them up underneath, and then back up a little bit. These are kind of disorganized and embarrassing, but you can see it's just shelves of tools. Some look nice because they get used more often. This whole entire setup is embarrassing. I turned the camera sideways, which probably won't work. Actually, wait a minute. We'll go like that. There we go. These are all of the air pneumatic tools that I used while still working at the dealership. It's super embarrassing to keep things organized like that, but this stuff just doesn't get used that much anymore. So it's there when I need it, but this shop doesn't really have cars come into it, so it's not that big of a deal. Another vise, you can never have enough. This cart here, I have another one with specially made jaws to hold certain shocks. That cart's a bit of a mess, to be honest, but it does the trick. More nuts and bolts, fasteners, smaller stuff that I can hang on the wall without really worrying about falling off. All the little things that you need to put a motorcycle back together properly. Spring clamps, rivets, well nuts, time inserts, all the hidden fasteners that you need so that you can do the job properly without kind of taking shortcuts. Press, we have the similar kind of press at school. This one I like a bit more just because it's got a gauge so you can really watch and see what you're doing, and then various pieces of steel just to kind of keep track of what you're working on, so you can take stuff apart, put it back together. Some of the more common tools that do get used: torque wrenches, snap-on, mat, the containers for them, the spare socket set which I don't really need anymore. This is my newest torque wrench because it's too difficult to get accurate settings. So that's a 1/4 inch drive for inside of motors, really small fasteners that require accuracy. Shelf above, just more specialty tools. Tools on tools on tools. Never ends. 1, 2, 3, 4 different cases, all of drill bits. Precision level, this thing's pretty cool. That's accurate to it. I wonder if you guys can, if I have that in a good spot. That's accurate to a 1/10 over 12 inches, so 0.0001, so you can really make sure whatever you're working on is super level. Some of my measuring stuff, this hasn't been used a whole lot. That's a digital 1 to 2 inch caliper. And then this is a little bit harder to use, but it's a dial bore gauge. So how I use this is there's all kinds of different standoffs that you can attach, and you have to have the reason what makes these difficult to use is you have to have like a standard. So you have to have a ring gauge or a hole, something that you know is super accurate, and then this is just used for comparing. So you take this tool, test it in whatever you're working on against the standard, make sure that it's accurate, and then go and put it in whatever part you're working on so you can make sure that it's the correct size. That shelf this will fall if I pull it any further, but just files, more automotive tools, pry bars, trim panel tools, fuel line, plastic fuel line clips. Gets a little narrow back here, but I don't really need to go through every single tool drawer. The rest of it's pretty straightforward. there's a couple different parts that you'll be able to see stuff that I'm working on. These are knee sliders. That's what goes on the end of your suit. And then there's Velcro that goes on the back side so that it goes against your knee. There's probably a picture of one here somewhere. Yeah, that's a good one. So right on the rider's knee, so that as they're going around corners, you can see they use that to hold their foot up. There's some two pro superbike riders I've worked for. Some thank you posters they made. Pro sport bike rider. The bike, the blue and orange bike, is from Ottawa. This white bike is from Ottawa as well, and then the black and red is from Montreal. That's the rider I've worked for the last 5 years. Tools I make, or not tools, these are parts I make, parts and tools. That's a pull rod tool I make and sell, fork cap tool that I make a bunch of as well, and then these are brake guards. So this isn't finished yet, but this will have a slot cut in the side of it, and then the bolt put through this way, and that goes on the end of a motorcycle bar so that if you and another rider touch, your brake lever won't engage accidentally. These are mandatory now for racing, so they usually explode if you hit the ground, so I make a bunch of them. Chemical storage, a spare computer in case what I use for normal operation of programming my CNC craps a bed. These are all the tools that I use normally in my CNC. Same sort of deal as what you see at school. Some of them are the exact same. Shear hog, slit saw. What's one that you guys see that we use all the time in school? Superfly. We use that all the time. I use the same ones. They work good. Air compressor. You don't realize how loud these are until you're unfortunately stuck in the shop with that close by. And then this is my CNC mill. Not exactly as nice or as fancy or as glamorous as looking as the one at school, but it gets the job done. All the curtains that are hanging from the ceiling are to keep the chips in. I wouldn't say it works that great, but it does okay. Certainly not the same sort of that you guys are used to at school. It doesn't really have any fancy graphic interface. I know a lot of kids haven't really had the most fun with programming in Fusion, but just for perspective, that's all the tools that I've broke in my CNC, learning how to program it over the last probably 10 years. I don't even want to guess. That's probably $2,500 worth of end mills. Drill bits are cheap, but end mills are super expensive. I should just throw them out. I don't really know why I save them. I guess because the material's valuable and they can be recycled. A sprocket, I made that for a BMW. The tooth pattern was a little bit too tall. It has to be shortened, so it went off the bike and came back. It went on the bike and came back off the bike pretty fast. I skipped right over this, but these are the first two kind of racetrack bikes that I helped with. So that was when I was in the dealership at Camco at Suzuki, and then this is the bike I race now. It doesn't look that pretty anymore, unfortunately, just because I've had a couple oopses. You hit the ground and the bikes don't look all that nice anymore. Same sort of chemicals as what we use at school. Spray 9 for cleaning everything, WD-40 in bulk, and then just motor oil for projects, for my race bikes. And then manual lathe, that's like what we have at school, but a bigger model. I got to get rid of it. I don't use it anymore. Once you get a CNC lathe, it's kind of useless having a manual one. So, just kind of working our way around. Electrical panel, scrap metal, chip bin. So this all down inside here is just, that's just all the chips from either the mill or the lathe, and then this pile's accumulated more just as a result of kind of tidying up a little bit. before shooting this video, but that's just all scrap steel that eventually gets recycled. The church down the road has a big bin for scrap metal, and you can donate it. Once it's full, they take it, they get their money for it, and then it's just a donation to the church. So it makes it easier for me to get rid of the metal because it's super close to home. Every shop needs one of these. You got to have a shop vac. The last one I had made it about 10 years. This one did pretty good. This one's new, on sale. This big beast. This is my newest machine purchase. Got to brand everything. Got to put your race number on everything. So that's why there's a 166. This is basically a massive automatic parts washer. So when I turn it on, I'm not going to do it because it sprays, but there's a C channel all with jets, and then the whole bottom has 200 liters of a cleaning solution in it, and then this just rotates around and spins super slow, and the parts all get cleaned. It does heat up quite a bit. It heats to, I think I have it set at 150 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what the instructions called for to start. Spin back to the middle. So that's Tormach. You recognize that brand, same as what's at school. That's the lathe though. So this is a CNC lathe as opposed to CNC mill. So this you would start with round bar, round material. This is a piece of steel I have for another project coming up. I gotta work on at some point when there's time. Whole bunch of parts that I've made. I made these originally for my wife, and then they just have to be finished. But these get bent into a half moon shape. It's a spur that you use for riding horses. I thought this was kind of funny to save. These are some of the tools I've broken on this lathe, learning how to use them. They're literally all the exact same tool. They're all parting tools. That's just the unfortunate learning process involved in programming and using CAD and CAM and making stuff on a CNC. That hurts when you look at how expensive those are, but I figured before I threw them in the recycle bin I'd show you guys. Fun fact, these parts have literally been in the shop for over a year, pretty much done. I just haven't managed to completely finish them and send them out for anodizing. They're captive spacers for a popular Yamaha model motorcycle. I just haven't finished them up yet. While cleaning things up and digging around, I managed to find this plate. This is the first CNC part I tried to make, I don't know, 13 years ago. I can't even believe it's still in this garage, or that it's made it from each shop that I moved from. But it was supposed to be a shifter cover for a vintage muscle car, and the guy gave me a cardboard template, and I had to try and find a way to measure the cardboard and copy it. And I machined this first half and sent it back to the guy, and it didn't even come close to fitting. This angle was wrong, and this angle was wrong. They were not symmetric, and it was a train wreck. And I figured I'll save it for the video, and then I'm chucking in the scrap metal bin. These were the first parts that I made on my Tormach lathe, which I'll spin the camera around and show you guys in a second. So it was just practicing threading. That's an M8 fastener. Whole bunch more captive spacers. That's pretty much the majority of what I use this lathe for, just odds and ends. And then you guys have seen this. It's just the jog wheel, keyboard, mouse. And then instead of the cutter turning and the material moving around, the material goes in and rotates, and then the cutters come, approach the work, and make the part. And then splash shield / chip guard just to keep things safe. The regular tools I use: change collets, set length, tighten the chuck, deburr parts, normal kind of stuff. And then the last corner is kind of a junk collection that needs to be dealt with. So my first welder, I've had that since I started my apprenticeship. I want to say I bought that when I was like 20, so I've had that a long time. New machines are way nicer now. That thing weighs a a ton, but it's all good. Canopy for at the track, my grandpa's toolbox, which is completely restored. I just have to bring it into the house and fill it with all his tools. Crate is a new motor for this motorcycle that's in the middle. That's by far the nicest bike in the shop. It's a buddy of mine. I'm helping him out. He comes over and tinkers. Obviously right now that's not really an option with the way things are going, but that's okay. Once it's kind of clear, we're in the clear to start hanging out with people again, he'll be able to come out and pull that motor out of the crate and swap and install it back in this bike. That's a 2015 Yamaha YZF-R1, so it's a pretty cool bike. Under the covers, my dirt bike, it's literally put away dirty, not clean at all, so I just keep a cover on it so I don't even look at it. And then these are all the toolboxes that I bring with me to the racetrack. So each time I go to the track, whether it's to ride or to work, these 4 toolboxes come with me. They all go in the back of the truck or in my camper trailer, whatever's got to happen, and then that's what I kind of store everything in: spare parts, fuel pump, computer, foot pegs, all the little odds and ends in case if you have a tip over and fall at the racetrack, tire pressure gauge, tool bin just for the stuff that I need to use quickly. This is super common in motorcycle racing. It's a tire probe. So when you come off the racetrack, you actually poke the tire to figure out what temperature it is and track what's going on, so you can use the tires to the absolute best of their ability. I mean, it's literally a junk pile, but that's 5 sets of tires at $500 a set, so that's $2,500 sitting there waiting to go to the scrapyard. And then up here, just in case the camera I'm carrying around doesn't really show any good views, I put a GoPro up top also recording. That's pretty much it. It's 25 by 30. It's not huge, not small. If I didn't want to work on motorcycles, I could easily clear them out, move that table, and shift things around and have plenty of room to put a full-size truck or a car in. But I don't really do that. I don't really work on cars at home. I just work on motorcycles at home and make parts, the fun stuff. This corner, my goal is to kind of get rid of, so all of this stuff that's there, that's all an anodizing setup, which I don't use anymore because the chemicals are super nasty, so that's all got to go. And then my goal is to have a small welding fixture table so that I can actually use this more appropriately than just kind of pulling it out and winging it somewhere in my shop floor. You can see this floor mat. It's not the cleanest, but when you just weld in random areas, you can get burn marks. Not ideal. So it's protected the floor, but not really needed. Anywho, simple, run-of-the-mill. Hope you enjoyed a shop tour. Hopefully I get to ride this bike again this summer, but if not, no big deal. We'll just wait until the next one.